There we go. Excuse me. What's up, everybody? How are you? Luke Thomas here. It is the 24th of April, 2025. How are you doing? This is episode 250. Episode 250 of the live chat. Well, the redone version of it. Obviously, I did it for a long time previously in MMA fighting under a different name, but under this name, under this channel, it's episode 250. Isn't that fun? Boy, these days creep up on you, do they not? How are you doing? Lots to get to. We have Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall news, sort of, but it's important. We have Ilia Topuria news, sort of. We've got Ali Act news. We've got a bunch of different stuff. In fact, I have a housekeeping note about that here in just a moment. So thumbs up if you're watching. Hit subscribe if you haven't. If you'd be so kind as to do that. Here's how this works. I put up a thread yesterday on the post section here at youtube.com/Luke Thomas. You guys fill it up and you rank the questions you want me to see. I'll go for about an hour on that. Afterwards, we'll go to the paid portion where you have no obligation to contribute if you don't want to. You can just watch the free portion. But if you'd be so kind and you fire a donation into the super chat, you can put a question along with it and I'll get to it there. The only exception to that would be if you're a member of the channel, in which case you can ask a question or two for free. You don't have to pay a single thing for it. Okay? All right. We got a lot to get to today. So, excuse me, without further ado, let's get this party started, shall we? All right. I think I have 3 housekeeping notes off the top. First of all, as a reminder, right here, this is a QR code for my Substack. Yesterday, we did a UFC Kansas City preview where we watched together. Now, it's, of course, 100% behind a paywall, but we watched together the UFC, where we previewed UFC Kansas City. We took a look at some Ian Garry fights, Carlos Praches, and made some, obviously some assessments of what stands out about Ian Garry, what is still an issue for him to work on, how that might match up with Carlos Praches. It was fun. The only place to get those is on Substack. I cannot put those on YouTube, but I can put them there. So I do. And we do a lot of other fun stuff as well, including a broad range of topics beyond just MMA, but also MMA and plenty of that. So that's a reminder there. That's topic number 1. Topic number 2. So I put out a video yesterday on the update on the Ali Act. And afterwards, I cannot divulge everything. In fact, I cannot divulge most things that we said. But Mike Mazzulli of the ABC called me yesterday. And he asked me to articulate some of what he thought was missing from my video. And I agreed I would tell you some of it. I'm just going to articulate, some of the things he thought were important. He did not agree with my characterization of what the ABC was doing. Stressed that it was still very early in the process. There was basically confirmation that the UFC is trying, or I should say TKO, excuse me. TKO is trying to make it so that they can get their own titles. Now, that being said, he has not seen any draft legislation. None has been presented to him. So, he doesn't even know exactly what this will all look like. I can say, as well, based on this conversation, that I will leave the specifics to what happens in the final draft legislation. But one thing that you should look out for that they may try to add to the Ali Act. Now, again, they do want to have it so that they can have their own titles. But it sounds like what they might want to do to put a little bit of carrot with the stick is introduce into legislation potential. And I want to be very clear about this. I don't know what will ultimately happen. I'm only relaying some of the broad strokes from my conversation with Mike, with his permission. There might be, again, let's see what the legislation looks like. Put it this way. There could be basic guarantees around pay, like minimums, introduced into legislation for boxers, as well as some improvements related to pre-fight medical screenings. They might add some of that, or at least there might be some plans to add some of that language. But again, what it exactly calls for, whether it goes through, do they even add it? I don't exactly know. I can't say yet, but that is, at least to my what's being told to me is that there is at least some discussion around that. Also, I have nothing to report on this one, but I would say that it's probably going to be important to pay attention to who actually introduces this legislation ultimately and what that might mean. So something to pay attention to there. I'm trying to think about this. Was there anything else he really wanted me to articulate? Yeah, he just did not agree with my characterization of ABC. He thinks that the media is jumping the gun in its assessment of ABC's role. So, I did not take down my video by any stretch of the imagination, but he wanted me to articulate this to you. So here I am doing that. It's topic 2. Topic 3. I got to meet the lead guitarist from Cannibal Corpse last night. Shouts to Eric Rutan. He also is one of the vocalists and guitarist for another band called Hate Eternal. Saw them at the MGM property in Oxon Hill, Maryland, which is just outside DC. Check this. I got this yesterday at the merch table. What do you guys think? Huh? Not bad, right? And then on the back, what do they have? Do they have DC? They have... Well, where the fuck is it? Oh, National Harbor, Maryland. You fucks. I mean, technically that's correct. Technically it was in National Harbor, Maryland. So I guess truth in advertising, but really, let's be honest, it's DC. Okay, that's what it was. But in any case, shouts to him. Cool guy, super cool guy. Huge boxing fan. We actually bonded over that. So fun times. All right, enough of that bullshit preamble. Let's get to your question. So it's about, 3:12. We'll go for about an hour on this one, then we'll get to the paid questions. All right? All right, let me take this off so I'm not completely just spamming you with shit. Let's do this. Okay. All right. Let's do it this way, like that. All right. If Topuria fights and loses to Islam, could Islam expose Topuria's weaknesses for other fighters to exploit? I think Bilal exposed Leon's weaknesses for Brady. Of course, all of this relies on other fighters having certain elite skills to capitalize on those weaknesses. Also, I think it could be helpful for someone like Patty to wait until Islam fights Topuria so he can borrow some of Islam's game plan for a potential future fight with Topuria. Well, in some senses, yes, that could be. I don't think we should overly state. I mean, Bilal saying Brady copied his homework is true to an extent, but not overly true. We've been over this a million times. The entries onto the takedowns and the kind of takedown and the position of the takedown itself, that operation, the Bilal Muhammad team deserves a lot of credit for. But after that, it had a pretty different game. And you might say, well, but didn't Brady take the back? Yes, he did initially, but that fight was won with top control. Basically, is what I'm going to argue, is won with top control. And that is all Sean Brady's game. And that is very little of that was borrowed from Bilal. I mean, maybe none of it was borrowed from Bilal Muhammad. So when we talk about one guy got influence from another, yes, real influence. Absolutely. No question about it. But we also have to recognize that there are natural limits to that kind of conversation. And the way in which he was, basically tripod passing, the way in which he was using reverse Kesugatami, reverse half guard, I made a whole video about it when he was going back and forth between the Kimura and chin strap guillotine and how he was setting all of that up. All of that is just very distinct from Bilal Muhammad. Really no relationship to that whatsoever. But getting to the outside of the right hip because he's bad on down blocking, Leon Edwards is on these double leg entries. Yes, it was the Bilal Muhammad team that truly first exploited that, and Brady picked up on that one a little bit. So for sure, there's some influence, but let's not overstate it. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Second thing I'm going to say is, yes, a guy like Islam absolutely could find a really sort of noteworthy weakness. But at the same time, what you have to remember is just because Islam can take advantage of somebody's weaknesses does not mean other elite lightweights can. It would have to be something that's it would have to be a weakness that can be exploited at scale. And not all weaknesses are like that. So in other words, it could happen, but we have to be kind of careful. Also, if it ends up being not really a technical issue, but it ends up being a bit of a size issue, or I should say, something along the order of the only fight anyway, between Dominic Cruz and Demetrius Johnson. Please go back and watch that fight. It happened here in DC. I was there cage side for it. The reality on that fight is, I've said many times, it wasn't like, I mean, Cruz is obviously very technical and very good, but it wasn't like that was the reason why he won. Yes, that was a contributing factor, but size was a really, really important factor there. You have to, I mean, it wasn't like, Cruz did stuff that other flyweights were able to pick up on. It was a size issue. So I still wonder about that. And it's like what role that might play. Now, if he ends up finding some real weakness that, over the course of 4 rounds, some patterns began to develop or whatever, or certain kinds of scenarios where we didn't know he was bad at before, and now we have a pretty clear sense of it. Yes, again, to the extent you can get to the position or get to the opening, that's fine. But not all weaknesses are as vulnerable as you might imagine, especially against the pound for pound best guy in the sport. We have to be very, very careful about that. So do I think that Islam could show us stuff that other guys could pick up on and it could spiral a little bit out of control? I've seen that before. I do not want to dismiss it. But Topuria is comprehensively well-rounded. To the best of our knowledge, he appears to be comprehensively well-rounded. And I think that while there might be some stuff that Islam is able to show, particularly for Paddy in that grappling context that you mentioned, that does seem like, individual things that they could pick up on for sure. But like a vast blueprint that Paddy could follow, I'm skeptical that there would be that much he could do. That seems a little much for me. Your mileage may vary. Is PFL making a mistake by not rematching Hughes versus Usman 2 right away? Well, they're independent contractors and they have the right to say no to fights. So it's not like you can just make them do it. I know what you mean. They could pay more money or whatever, incentivize it. So in that sense, could they do it? The answer is yes. It seems to be a mistake to not capitalize on that kind of a thing. Now, they are taking Paul Hughes back to Northern Ireland and giving him a very beatable opponent. This is something in the order of the Strikeforce style of matchmaking. This to me has Mike Kogan kind of written all over it a little bit here, where they, you get one tough fight and then they build you back up with, even if you win it, but another one where it's like, an in-between fight where, you look like an amazing fighter, you get another title defense, you get another media cycle. It's this sort of Strikeforce, almost like tune-up fight style of promotion. I think that will do him some good. So like, it's not like an objective loss that they're doing it in that particular way. But like, would it be beneficial for them, all things being what they are, to pursue a rematch closely on the heels of the first one? Yes. I guess what I would say is I just think of all the problems that they have, getting to that. Sure, that would be the right call, it seems to me. But they've got so many other problems. They have so many other issues. To me, the bigger issue is keeping their stars active. To me, their issue is their fealty to an absolutely dead letter in the way in which they're doing tournaments. To me, the issue is that they don't ever have a crown jewel on any of their cards. I mean, part of the reason why that card was great was, the card itself was good, but it had a crown jewel of a main event. They almost never have crown jewel of main events. It's these tournament ones over and over and over again, where it's just like, one of the moderately better fights than the other ones is at the end of the line. And even then, that's not necessarily true. They don't stack cards in ways that fight fans traditionally understand it should be stacked. And to me, it's like, you should do this. If you're going to do the tournament stuff, you should have a crown jewel at the top of that card. Keep Johnny Eblin active. Keep Patchy Mix active. Have him fight whoever the fuck, but keep him active. Certainly is better than just waiting. Well, we're going to do these champion series at the middle of the year. It's fucking July, man. By the time you're going to have that in full swing, that's late. You missed a giant chunk of the year, and this is not an organization that can just decide to do that. To me, the problem is they are married to a content model that limits their ability. Again, we talked about this on MK. It at least arguably enhances their ability to capture venture capital funding, but the problem is long term. It locks them into a format that makes their product untenable, and they don't really have a fan base, at least certainly not stateside. And so as a consequence, they're in this really unfortunate middle ground where, yes, they're able to keep raising capital, but on a bridge building path to nothingness. And that's really the problem. Like, if you fixed that, you'd be like, well, was it a mistake that they didn't do Hughes Usman 2? You'd be like, yeah, they probably should have done it. But they'd have so many other things going right, I think, for them. Or it would be less of a noticeable problem. To me, it's that's their core issue, is the way in which they have organized their product. That is killing them. Let's see this one. All right. Hey, Luke, did you catch Ariel's recent comment on the Jon versus Tom situation? I did. Or I believe I did anyway. He says the UFC has agreed to Jon's financial demands. Mostly he says that. And now it's entirely up to Jon to make the fight happen. But the fight still isn't signed. If Ariel's report is accurate, and by the way, if Ariel is saying it, I would strongly recommend that you trust it. The guy's been doing this a very long time, and I know like not everybody loves him, but a lot of people do. But that's not relevant. What's relevant is his record on accuracy is very high. If Ariel's report is accurate and the fight never happens, is this proof that Jon really never had any intention to fight Tom, and the money talk was just a smokescreen? Could be. In other words, was the demand for money more of a bluff and built-in excuse to avoid Tom because Jon never thought the UFC would agree to it? I've talked about this before. Years ago, Lloyd Irvin used to say he would do privates, but it'd have to be like $1,000 an hour. And there ended up being a bit of a controversy at the time, not so much for the stuff that eventually encircled that team, but prior to all of that. And people were like, well, how does he have the audacity to do that? And the reality was he just didn't want to do that. And he just put up a number being like, I guess if they pay me that much, I'll do it. But like nobody did that. It was just kind of a way to price himself out, or in the event that like someone was just stupid enough to do it, fine, I'll take your money. But it was just it was a way of saying either no or for crazy money. But there's a thin line between purposely pricing yourself out and then sticking to your guns about your negotiated terms, and how you adjudicate the difference can be quite difficult. What I would say is I find it very unlikely that they're giving him $30 million. I just don't think that is accurate. Now, whether that was the public figure that he offered and there was a separate private figure remains to be seen. Again, my theory all along was that they would give him a modest boost from what they typically might have offered or what the contract offered. They might have built in some additional tiers based on like, hey, here's the math on this. If you're able to sell this amount, you would have normally gotten X, but before this fight, we can change the terms so that if you sell a similar kind of amount or even a higher amount, it'll be much more than that. And that could get you closer to whatever the ultimate project was, 25 million, 30 million. Again, whatever that final number is. I find it very unlikely that they offered him 30. Could they have offered him 20? 20 seems possible to me. That gets you pretty close. And that would be, I don't think any fighter, including Conor McGregor, has ever made a $20 million payday in the UFC as any kind of guarantee. I don't think that's ever happened. So if they got that, that would still be a significant, frankly, a historical achievement for a fighter to get that high. But I just want to state outright, I am very, very skeptical of the idea that they gave him $30 million. And if you actually watch that video, Ariel is very, very careful to say that he doesn't bring up the $30 million figure. Again, it could be. I'm just going to tell you that my hunch is that that's probably not the figure that they're offering him. But something very, very, something, again, historically relevant as a huge purse. And he actually says the demand within reason is what he says. Or there's a modest qualifier on it. I think that he got more than what he ordinarily would have gotten. Certainly, I am very skeptical that it ends up being. What I can understand something. Canelo doesn't get out of bed for $30 million, right? That's the guarantee. I think his guarantee is 33, 35, right around that mark. That's Canelo's guaranteed. That doesn't count closed circuit. That doesn't count share of pay-per-view. That doesn't count concessions. That doesn't count merch. That doesn't count gate. Like, he gets a shit ton more on the other end. But his guarantee starts there. I don't think that's where we're talking about. I would be very, very surprised. So there probably is still some room for interpretation on Jon's part about like, well, this is a huge offer, certainly by MMA standards. It's a historic offer. It could still be short of what he has publicly suggested. Yeah, my feeling this is a tough one, man. Here's what I think has happened in the career of Jon Jones. He was vastly better than everybody. Basically, once he kind of matured into, a few years into fighting, he was basically better than everybody. He was well ahead of his peers. And for any number of reasons, talented athlete, dimensions, his frame, everything, and he was able to lord that over the fight game for an enormous amount of time, even through all of the ups and the downs. But the Reyes fight, to me, was really the first one where I thought the game had caught up with him a little bit. And, you can point to the Thiago Santos fight, to the Smith fight, to everything else. But to me, the long extended hiatus and then the move to heavyweight, and then really having a very ho-hum heavyweight experience, to me, it's like the guy rightly recognized how good he was when it mattered. And I think he rightly recognizes he's not that guy anymore. And so he's trying to calibrate his opportunities to not conceal the fact that he isn't as good anymore, but to make effective use of what he has while not necessarily acknowledging the broader reality that has set in. And I'm not just in a way where like, oh, he's older now. I mean, it's a little bit more than that. Like, I think he's constantly working to some degree, but there's just been a real decline in what he used to be able to lord over his opponents. That gap has significantly narrowed, even for a super depleted heavyweight division. And so he kind of recognized, I think my theory is that he recognizes that he's just in a very different place about who he can beat and who he can't. I don't know if he actually believes he can beat Tom Aspinall. And I'm not even saying this like, oh, he's some kind of coward. Yeah, I don't care for Jon Jones, but I don't think Jon is terribly self-aware in terms of understanding the things that have tripped him up in life. He's very lacking in self-awareness. But when it comes to his athletic life and understanding what his gifts are, what makes it work, understanding who he is as an athlete, he's always been actually quite gifted and quite ahead of the curve. And I think it's that second level understanding that is the marker here. And so did he say $30 million as like, oh, they'll never do it, and they got kind of close, and so now he's got a little bit of a difficult decision to make, or not? I'm gonna maintain 50-50 on this one in terms of whether it happens or it doesn't. The other part about it, you have to realize, I've said this before, Jon is owed several $30 million paydays in my judgment. Like, not even just one. He's owed several of them. And maybe them getting close, or whatever the number ends up actually being, is, kind of a close but no cigar kind of a circumstance for him. He doesn't actually need it. But I just feel like he keenly understands he's not what it wants. It's just not what it once was anymore. And that's why he wanted to feast off the corpse of Stipe Miocic, and Aspinall is just a completely fucking different challenge to that. So as an athlete, as a fighter, he'll definitely have my respect if he takes this. If he doesn't take it, like, if there's any guy who can coast off the resume of what he did in one weight class, Jon's the guy. Or at least he's definitely one of the guys. This heavyweight run adds almost nothing for me, especially if he doesn't fight Tom. It doesn't. I mean, you beat Cyril Gane, who has like comical grappling, and the corpse of Stipe Miocic. Like, what does that even mean? I don't know. Jon's got a lot of problems recognizing his place in the wider world and what's happening. But as an athlete, I feel like he keenly understands what he's got going on, and that hesitation to me says everything. That's why he's hesitating. Like, can I do it? Is this somebody I can beat? Like, is this? Yeah, there's doubt, not fear, It's not a fear thing. It's a doubt thing. Does he really believe he can beat that guy if that guy is on that day? I tend to think he's got questions about it. And that was absolutely not the fucking case. Whatever he was saying in the media, like, oh, this guy is the toughest guy, he might have said that shit. He didn't believe that shit, Maybe, and maybe after the Gustafsson fight, that was a little bit different, but so let's see what happens. We still have to wait and just see what happens. See what UFC says. Like, I do think UFC is trying to make it. I mean, Ariel, again, I trust Ariel's reporting. Like, if they're trying to make it, I believe it. I believe that they're actually trying to make it, within whatever they can do within their means and the rules of their own organization to make it happen. Like they're trying, they're hustling. We'll see. With Ilia saying he's starting camp, does the UFC have multiple paths for lightweight and welterweight ready to announce as soon as Belal de la Madeleine is over? That is a clarifying event. That is a clarifying event. They got to see what's going to happen with there. Because if they can make Islam Topuria right away, then they might be able to pull that trigger. But who the fuck knows, right? So that will be, yes, 3:15 will be a very clarifying moment. I went to Chipotle today. What is your Chipotle order? Ready? Rice, pinto, white rice, pinto. But you got to get them. Don't let them serve the full thing because it ends up being too many carbs. But if they do it the right amount, those two fajitas, double chicken, pico de gallo, salsa verde, corn if I'm feeling frisky, but usually not. Half a portion of sour cream, lettuce, and then hot sauce on top. Ends up being about 820 to 850 calories. Super, super full of good for your macros. All right. Damn, y'all are afraid of these guys not taking these fights. If Jon doesn't fight Aspinall, Islam doesn't fight Topuria, and DDP and Khamzat don't fight this year, is this the most disappointing year in recent history? Wow. Boy, that's an interesting question. All right, one more time. If Jon doesn't fight Aspinall and Islam doesn't fight Topuria and DDP and Khamzat don't fight this year. Yeah, because then you'd have to say also it's the same year where Poatan was coming off of a fighter of the year candidate and now losing. He might get it back, but that would be part of the year as well. Yeah, I mean, just to answer a very basic question. If you don't get Jon, Conor is doing whatever the fuck Conor's doing. Who can count on that? So he's not really relevant. And even if he was back, it would still be big, obviously, but not what it once was. But who the fuck knows with him? Can't count on him at all. Jon is your other big star, and the Jon Tom fight is arguably the biggest one UFC can make. So if you lose that, now that's gone. Again, under this question. If you don't get Islam Topuria, that you could still get each of them to fight, but potentially not each other. And so therefore you're not getting a blockbuster, although, I would be happy to see Islam back and certainly happy to see Ilia back. And if DDP and Khamzat don't fight this year, would it be the most disappointing year in recent UFC history? Yeah. Because every year they've been there's this escalating, just killing it thing going on the whole time. And there's been obviously a little bit of coming back to earth more recently. But even last year, Poatan was able to kind of save the day a little bit. Topuria had, a great year, just 2 fights, but those were big contributors to the more meaningful things that had happened. If you take all of that away, my basic question would be who's doing the things that capture the public's and the fans' imagination? Okay, you might get Kayla versus Amanda. That's not nothing. I'll take that. I'll absolutely take that. That's something, but that's not on par with these other ones. Certainly not even close to being on par with as a spectacle of how big the fight can be. Jon versus Tom. Who else would it be? Okay, you'd have what? You'd have Merab doing stuff. That's fine. Pantoja doing stuff. That's fine. Volk is back. Okay, that's not nothing. That was a great 314 was a great card actually. Bilal or JDM might be doing something, and let's see if Poatan can get back on the horse. But to the point I'm raising, like if you're basically saying if you take out the main ingredients of what could power and frankly even maybe salvage at the higher end of what the UFC is capable of this year, if you take that out, is it the most disappointing year? How in recent memory? How could it not be? Under the way in which you are framing it. Now, I think there's a lot of things that have to go wrong for none of that to take place, or I should say for all of that in the way in which you had posited for all of that to happen. That seems like a lot to me. But yeah, I mean, who else is there? Who else is there to be a big promotional event for them? I don't know. Dustin Holloway would be big. certainly, but again, on the par of Jon versus Tom, like, not really. Oh, here we go. If Max beats Dustin, Max Holloway beats Dustin Poirier, do you think he'll get a title shot or a title eliminator fight? He could. Yeah, he could, especially coming back off of a Topuria knockout loss and then beating a big puncher at 55. Yeah, with the BMF title, yes, he could. Yes, he could. Now that's it's a guy he's lost to twice, so that seems unlikely. That well, beating him is possible, but like stopping him, that seems a little bit harder to do. Who do I think Ilia is fighting against in International Fight Week? So they're saying it won't be an interim title, right? They're saying it'll be for the full weight class title. I just don't see how Islam gives that up. I mean, I think that they've got Islam and maybe Charles on standby, and then they'll just pull the trigger in either direction. Right? I think that's what I mean. So I guess Saryukian's in the mix too. I doubt that's the one that they go with. I think that's just they're waiting for 315, then they'll pull the trigger in either direction, have those guys getting ready. I'd rather be Charles. Not that it sounds crazy because the Islam fight is much bigger. It's a much better fight objectively, but I would still like some order to be established. I mean, maybe we're past the point of that being relevant anymore, but I don't know. I would have still liked to have seen Topuria kind of work his way up, but just given where we're at, I don't even know if that's feasible or doable anymore. Luke, what is your preferred media rights partner for the UFC and why? Can I be honest with you? I'll just tell you straight up. I wish that they could put everything on Fight Pass. I know that's completely never going to happen, or at least unlikely to happen, but I prefer that. Their search functionality is good. There's tons of extra stuff on there. Their user interface is good. You can slow stuff down. You can put subtitles. You can do all kinds of stuff. And they used to have more tools. They've actually stripped some of those away. I suspected they would add more. Like, people are desperate for them to go to Netflix. And I'm like, fucking why? Yes, I have a Netflix subscription. Sure. Yes, it'd be nice. And if it helps the sport being on Netflix, sure. I don't know what it really does for the NFL. Has it really changed WWE's fortunes? Maybe in certain markets it's been beneficial for certain parties. I don't know. I don't feel like it's like radically altered the course of professional wrestling history. I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it does not seem that way. So, I mean, if it's good for the sport, let's put whatever that, wherever UFC needs to go where it's good for the sport, that's my answer. But as a customer, it's like, dude, like Fight Pass, who's been a better streaming partner for UFC than Fight Pass? Sure as fuck isn't ESPN. I mean, no. And then Fox Sports didn't really, I mean, they had the Fox Sports components, but they didn't really have a streaming component as like some kind of, everything was televised on linear television. So that they're not even really eligible. Like going to Netflix is fine. Again, my family, we have a Netflix subscription. It's okay. Like I'm cool with it. But why the fuck do I care if it's just like, oh, okay. I mean, I care in the sense that like ESPN Plus is so bad that I can rely on Netflix. The Jake Paul Tyson fight notwithstanding, you can more commonly rely on Netflix to be able to deliver a more quality product. It's more reliable. It's more reliable, certainly. Great. I'll take it on that sense. And if it doesn't cost me more, I'll take it on that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have hardcore demands about this, but in general, I want something where I have a vast library at my fingertips. I want something that's got tools on the interface that allows me to watch the fight a different way or to enjoy it a different way. And dude, Fight Pass is fucking awesome for that. Fight Pass is one of the few subscriptions that I pay for that I'm like happy to pay for. I'm like, and listen, not everyone has to watch as much tape as I do for my job, obviously, but for my job, Fight Pass is a godsend. And one thing that I've really discovered, like, I had to call the XFC fights. There are tons of guys who have never fought in UFC who have a bunch of fights on Fight Pass. It ends up being like a pretty interesting repository of content. I don't know how those rights deals work with these promotions about who gets to hold the content. But like the guy in the main event, Lucas Corbaji, he had like 4 or 5 fights on there from XFC 52. I was like, dude, this fucking rules. So, again, whatever's best for the sport, whatever like doesn't kill the bankroll of fight fans, whatever makes it accessible, whatever delivers a reliable product. If that's Netflix, cool. But I've never had a more enjoyable experience from a streaming perspective than I have had relative to watching Fight Pass. That's been, for me, that's been the best. Lo mejor. Luke, do you think the UFC will get a guaranteed fee on their next pay-per-view deal? Yes, like they have with ESPN, yes. Or will the companies bidding on the rights balk at the rumored low pay-per-view buys? And if the UFC can't get a guarantee, do we see more consistent good to great pay-per-view cards? The question is not will they get a guarantee. The question is how big the guarantee will be. They'll get a guarantee. Now, the current one is about $20 million for each pay-per-view. Will they get 30? Right? Will they get 40? Does someone want to pay for $40 million guaranteed for, I'm going to make up something, 8 fights a year? Do they want to do that where 3 fights in, or I'm sorry, 3 years into the deal, like is it still going to be worth 40 million then? Like, I don't know. That part I don't know, but are they going to get a guarantee? They're going to get a guarantee. They'll get a guarantee. Like, zero question in my mind about that. The question is, how long is the deal? How much is the inventory? 4 events, 6, 8, the whole thing, and then obviously 3. Like, how does that match the guarantee? Like, what do those factors do to drive the guarantee? But yeah, they'll get one, no question. In August, Jon Jones will have the longest single reign of the UFC heavyweight title of all time. Jon no doubt knows this. Do you think that has any factors in why this fight is taking so long? I doubt that's the main reason. I doubt that. I doubt. Possible plays a role, not a significant driver of why we're here. No. I didn't see this. Look, what do you make of the recent news of Mayweather's financial downfall? I wasn't even aware there was an issue. Now I have to see. Oh, Jesus. It just 3 days ago. Floyd Mayweather shrugs off bankruptcy rumors as his $100 million watch collection, blah, blah, blah. He got bankruptcy? Rumors are flying. Floyd Mayweather hitting financial turbulence, but the only thing actually flying is he's a $50 million Gulfstream G650. 50 Cent started getting at him. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Until there's more evidence about it, I don't know what to say about that. But, there's no amount of money that being like, I don't know if Mayweather did this or not, but it's not hard. If you spend money stupidly, it's very easy to it doesn't matter the amount. Doesn't matter the amount. Oh, he made $1 billion, and if you bought a Gulfstream, there goes half of it. You know what I mean? There's no amount of money with that. No amount of money insulates you from your own financial stupidity. Can't be done. Does the fact that you were a Marine make you feel more comfortable critiquing America? I have no clue. I think a lot of Dems / liberals have a hang-up about not being considered patriotic enough. I assure you they do not. I could see having served in the military absolve someone of any potential conservative America imposed liberal guilt and even establish your bona fides among conservatives. Well, conservatives will, if they want, deny anyone's bona fides, but I don't know. No, I'm an American. I don't know that it gives me any particular license to be more accepting or more critical of various facets of American life other than the ones you might have like directly experienced. But I don't ever, that isn't to say that it isn't influencing me in ways I'm not aware of, but like consciously, like what I feel like more. First of all, when you're like, oh, I think a lot of Dems and liberals have a hang up about not being considered patriotic enough. Let me assure you that is not true. That there is some this turn towards neoliberalism that happened under the Clinton era, and like, the right wing is going to be war hawks. We're going to be even more war hawks. There's a little bit of that happening where there's almost like this race in certain ways to show, like we're not going to be outflanked by our political opponents in terms of military support or warmongering. That exists to a degree, but like your rank and file people who are of the left, like, do they sit there and haggle about their own patriotism? They do not. Some are very patriotic that I know, some are not. Some are, they don't have opinions one way or the other. They just kind of live their life in a disconnected way. But like this notion that they have a hang up, that is the political, the focus group class. They might, but the average person of this political persuasion simply does not. And I don't know if it gives, if I'm conscious of it, if it gives me license. I think I've always had a big mouth one way or the other. I'd probably have opinions irrespective of that. And frankly, being in the military does give you, especially in the enlisted ranks, it gives you insights into certain parts of American life. Yes. And that can inform your judgment. Absolutely. But like, there's plenty of people who serve in the enlisted ranks who have no fucking idea how America works and what it really needs or what it really doesn't. It doesn't confer upon you grand wisdom in that particular sense. So, if someone's like, oh, I'll take their opinion because they served in the military, now I question that person's opinion. How do you see a fight between Volk and Evloev playing out? Do you favor Evloev's takedowns or Volk's takedown defense? I mean, the problem with Evloev is he's got phenomenal position. He's strong as shit. He has great takedowns. He just doesn't do a lot of damage. He's not against somebody of the caliber of Volk. He is not a significant submission threat. Against someone the caliber of Volk, he's going to be hard to hold down for ground and pound. You know what I mean? You might be able to take his back. You might be able to win and hold positions, but Volk is going to be resisting like a motherfucker the entire time, not just the takedown, but getting up. And Volk can do damage. Volk has one of the most underrated parts of his game is his ground and pound. Phenomenal ground and pound. So he's got that, number one. Number two, he's got wrestle ups for days. Phenomenal back defense, phenomenal takedown defense. And he can jab at that range. He has obviously phenomenal footwork. He has great cage positioning. I think that certainly, there could be prolonged moments where a takedown is happening, top control is happening for Movsar, and he could win a round or even two potentially doing that. He could be a threat in that particular way. He is sticky, and then he can kill the clock. That's not a threat you can ignore. But if you are absolutely limited in your ability to do physical damage or finish and arrive in positions for submission, how the fuck are you going to beat someone like Volk? It would take a lot, an error on Volk's part, a continuous error, aging overnight kind of a thing. I think Volk's a very tough fight for Movsar. These guys who want to win on position, everyone makes their problems be like, oh, the UFC doesn't believe in them because their style is boring. That can play a role, and that does play a role. That's real. Yeah, it's real. But the real thing that's holding them back is they're not really attackers. Against someone that's overmatched, yeah, but we're talking quality opposition in Volk, right? Quality opposition. These guys don't have tremendous ground and pound. Like, dude, they're the opposite. Everyone's like, oh, they're all these Dagestani wrestlers. Dude, Khabib was a serious submission threat. Khabib's ground and pound was terrifying. A lot of these guys have neither part of that, or they might have one, but a lot of them have neither. So like, how do you beat a guy as good as Volk doing that? It can be done. It'll be hard. Do you think the Abrego issue, this is the guy who was what we thought was sent to Secot, but sent to another prison in El Salvador, is one Democrats should keep highlighting, yes, or avoid because Republicans paint them out to be sympathetic on illegal immigration and possible criminality? I could not give a fuck less. These are issues where Republicans poll well. Actually, they're underwater on this one too. Trump's only positive right now, used to be positive on many things, handling of the stock market, economy, a number of things. And again, there could be different responses in different demographics. Did you see he has a higher than 70% unfavorable rating with Latinos right now? But getting back to this issue by issue, he does have high numbers on the border. He is now net negative with Americans on deportation. And I'm going to say it one more time. What they did to Abrego is not deportation. What they did to him is imprisonment. There are any number of ways in which you could facilitate and extend legal deportations. It's actually not that difficult to do. You have to put a bunch of resources into these DOJ immigration courts, such as you can call them courts, but they have a moment to basically identify either the legal status or legal authority to be here. These go very quickly, and if not, you're on your way. Obama sent millions of people out of the country doing exactly that. That is not the same thing as ignoring an existing court order to keep someone in the country, but putting that even aside, sending them to another country's prison. That is very, very difficult to do. And I'm just going to say this as clearly as I can. Number one, if you do not prove, separate of this incident more generally, if you do not prove if you are making claims about someone's either legal status to be here and to what extent criminal factors have influenced that, and you don't prove it, and then you send someone to another country, particularly one that they may not even have any relationship to, like if you're Venezuelan, you're here on asylum, they snatched you up off the street like they did that 19-year-old kid in the Bronx, and then who has no charges whatsoever, no criminal background whatsoever, and then you send them to Secot. And you're paying the country of El Salvador to take them. There's a word for that. It's called trafficking. I don't give a shit if they want to exercise. Well, I mean, there's a question about what the appropriate number of deportations is, but either way, if they want to solve this problem, people keep saying, we're going to have a trial for every single immigrant. Once again, or people you want to deport, they're not trials. It's only a trial in a criminal matter related to criminal proceedings. In an immigration situation with these immigration courts, these are not trials. These are very quick hearings. They can fire through them very rapidly. It's a very basic way of instituting due process into the system. And I'm going to say something. Folks, due process exists for any number of reasons, not least of which is it is insurance against bad policy and bad decisions. If you have sufficient due process in any version of the justice system, wherever that may be, and again, there's various versions of it. Some are better than others, but it's insurance against fuck-ups. It's insurance against things that are bad. That's the whole fucking idea about it. If you wish to make it work, in terms of the policy aims, we wish to deport X amount of number of people, whatever, and it's within the confines of what the Constitution allows for, you just need to increase capacity to do that. They could do this. They could fund a vast increase in these DOJ courts for these hearings, and they could achieve a very close to their objectives. And then I think they could win on the merits. But when you're snatching up people with autism tattoos that have no known criminal record here or in the country from which they are fleeing, and they're seeking asylum in this one, and then you send them to a third prison, a third country in a prison, and you didn't verify any of this shit, that's trafficking. There's no other word for that. And the reason why it's like, dude, everything with this administration, they take something where they might actually have a little bit of way to gain an advantage, and they just give the shit away. If it wasn't for the fact that they are like flaunting the judicial restraint that is being or attempted to be imposed on them, not least of which is from the Supreme Court now with not one but two, 1-9-0, now 7-2 orders, one related to the AEA. If they weren't doing that, I actually think they would win over the public. I actually think it would be a losing issue, but they fucking go so far that it becomes untenable. And now they're losing on it. More to the point, I don't give a shit if this polls well. With the whole reason that the left is in trouble is because everything they fucking do doesn't come from courage. It comes from what polls well with Frank Luntz or whoever the fuck telling them that, oh, you need to be careful with this. That's where everything comes from. And that's why everything they do is so mealy-mouthed. They have no standards. They have no action. Hakeem Jeffries, oh my fucking God. what a coward he is. Standing up for basic judicial review to make sure that the decisions that you make are the correct ones and that you've given a sufficient evidentiary basis or legal review of the process, as quick as it might be in certain cases. This is insurance against fucking it up. And if you run over that, people are rightly going to look at that and say, that seems a little bit too far. They did not have to. On the economy as well. With this, I mean, who could defend the tariff policy? I would love to hear what that would be. I'm not even going to get into it. The point I'm just trying to make is, even if it polled poorly, I wouldn't give a shit. But the fact is, it's actually polling now. It is now polling opposite of what the Trump administration is hoping would happen. Oh, keep talking about it. It's a distraction from his tariffs. None of that is proving to be true because they can't get out of their own fucking way. A gentleman here says, keep up the good work, Luke. You're appreciated. No, you're appreciated. All right. The Fighting Nerds have a two-man data analytics team that breaks down opponent patterns, and I assume many other data points of both opponents and their own fighters. This seems like Moneyball. Is this the beginning of a new era where all major fight teams have programmers/data analysts on staff? It's unlikely to be a coincidence that their team is having this much success with this method. I cannot believe it is taking this long for the fighters to wake up. Dude, the Fighting Nerds, I fucking love them for so many reasons, not least of which is they got a cool name, they got a cool identity. You know, they're out there just murking everybody. Not everybody, guys know Bruno Brazil has a different record, but you know, the dudes are out there. God, I'm not trying to like single her out. I'm just saying they're doing well as a team. And all these guys, the Hoofies and the Procheses and the, you know, you name it. These guys have exciting styles. Silva, whoever, Kyle. They're great for so many reasons. It blows my fucking mind how behind the times they are in terms of pre-fight prep. Not so much in hard work and then working with their coaches, but scouting. Jesus. I cannot believe how bad it is. And it's kind of funny too. I've had discussions with various folks who over the course of years who work at different promotions. And I've often wondered, I've tweeted about this separately, but like I've often wondered, you know, why don't they have bigger scouting teams in terms of what they want to do? And this could be true for UFC or PFL, blah, blah, blah. None of these places have like big scouting teams. And what the answer you kind of get back is like, at least on the UFC side or the PFL side or whoever, like the Ryzen side, they feel like a smaller operation allows them to be more nimble and have a coherent ethos about how they do it. I don't know if that's true or not, but you know, it is a consistent thing that I've heard. But on the fighter side, why, if you have the money and you have the resources, and again, that's not going to be everybody, but if you do, and some of these guys do, there are armies of people who, some have specialized fight training, some necessarily don't, but can be very valuable for this kind of a thing, where they can do the kind of scouting that can meaningfully make a huge difference, especially over the long run of what you're doing. And they simply do not. Attributing all of their success to this would be a bridge too far. I think that would simply be kind of crazy. And I'm not suggesting that's what the question says, but I just want to make it clear. It's not that they're doing this kind of two-man data analytics stuff that is like really the difference maker. But I do think it is a positive contributor in a measurable way. And if the other teams and the other actors in the space aren't doing it, it's not just another like measurable improvement. It's an untapped resource that your competitors aren't even bothering to fucking look at. We in this sport are so behind the times in what it means to do proper scouting. If there's one thing that I am convinced, a buddy of mine, here's how I know this. A buddy of mine was a scout for an NHL team. Let me assure you, they work in big numbers in terms of the staff. And how many guys play on a team, a professional hockey team? You know, based on I think how many guys were in his office? It was a bunch. I mean, I don't think it was a dozen, but it was, close. We're talking about these guys have like they spend all their time not just examining the minors, but then there was this, there's the part of the folks are looking at the other opponents in the league, upcoming games, showing tendencies, blah blah blah, as well as like searching for talent. These guys they worked day and night. They worked in packs, so to speak. They worked with they had tons of resources, and I'm like, how is it that like all these other sports put enormous influence and importance on this, and then in combat sports, it's like, yeah, I have my coach look at tape, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Dude, over time, tape does not lie. You get revealed on tape. If there's not a lot of tape, there's a lot that's unknown, a lot that can be changed. But for a known quantity, a championship caliber fighter who's been fighting for a few years or even longer than that, tape doesn't lie. Tape does not lie. It reveals more than these fighters are aware that it reveals, even under like more intense scrutiny. And sometimes you ask, the first question was, can someone follow the blueprint? And following the whole thing of what someone else laid out, this is very tricky and difficult to do, if at all even possible. But you don't. The bigger point is you don't even need that. Sean Brady didn't need to borrow all of what Bilal Muhammad was doing. What he needed was, hey, what are a couple of ways I can borrow some of these entries? And then from there, he was off to the races with whatever he likes to do for the most part, right? That's not fully true, but mostly true, yeah? They just need a little bit. But look at how much that aided him. He didn't really have to struggle on these takedowns, hardly at all. And once he got him, it was fucking curtains. Like, the amount of, you just need a little bit of like super valuable information to have significant changes happen in the course of a bout in terms of your chances of winning and losing. And they fucking punt on it all the time. It can, my whole career in media has been of adopting the posture that I have to assume that the fighters and the coaches and everyone I'm asking knows more than me. I have even when I didn't think that was true, I'm interviewing an amateur fighter or something, I nevertheless adopt that posture because the truth is you can learn something from everybody. You can learn something from everybody. But one thing that I've just come to realize over time is the industry is so fucking wrong for not doing more of this. They're just wrong. They're just wrong. It won't uniformly help every fighter the same amount in every way ahead of every bout. But good teams, good gyms, good fighters that have a little bit of scratch, you'll see more of it. I'm telling you, you'll see more of it. It is such an obvious thing that they could go into that they just punt on. Can you imagine? These guys are they're training, they're getting fucking rhabdo doing 3 a days rather than doing, maybe let's do 2 a days and then spend the third session studying tape with the data analytics guys who've been doing nothing but looking at tape all week on their opponents and finding all these little tendencies and little entries and things to exploit and things you can work on, these little minute details. And we're not going to spend any money doing that. It makes no fucking sense. No other sport that I'm aware of, I mean, maybe boxing because they have the same kind of problem, but no organized team sport ever would dream of doing something like that. Ever, 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 ever. It drives me fucking crazy. Drives me crazy. I know on this, I'm right on this one. I'm right. And the fact that the fighting nerds are like, oh yeah, of course we do this. Right. The least surprising thing about it is that they recognize the importance of this. The least surprising thing. Tape does not lie. Again, over the course of time, tape abso-fucking-lutely does not lie. Wondering if you would ever do a full breakdown on Ilia's striking game the way you broke down Volk's. Yeah, I guess I would love to. It's a lot of work, but I would love to. Overall, who do you think had the more layered and dangerous stand-up? Dangerous stand-up is Ilia. Layered is Volk. Volk layers in. Volk doesn't have the pop that Ilia does. Now Ilia's game is layered. He's playing with both of them kind of do the same thing in a very general sense. I mean, obviously the mechanics of it and the particular tactical choices are all different, but they're just rhythm disruptors. They set patterns and then they change it, and they set patterns and then they change it. And what weapons they use ultimately are a little bit different level of firepower by a lot. There's the meaningful differences, but like they're trying to make you expect a certain degree of familiarity, and then they're just switching it all the time. And Volk is more active about all the switching. He's a little bit more involved. There's a little bit more work that goes into it. But I think Ilia is a little bit more restrained, and that makes sense because his power is much more consequential. Volk's power is not nearly as consequential. Yeah, he had that big shot on Yair. That's a great one. But fight to fight, relative to Ilia, it's not the same level of power. So I think that's the difference. But whose stand-up is more dangerous? Fucking Ilia is much more dangerous. But Volk has these vast layers of complexity built in. Should Holloway go back to 45? No. A lot of Topuria questions. It looks like Topuria is fighting Charles at IFW, right? International Fight Week. If Topuria heavily out-grapples and submits or puts his lights out instead of 2 rounds, do you favor him against Islam? Yes. If not, would any dominant performance against Oliveira cause you to favor him against Islam? I'll be honest. I think that the only real concern I have it's really one. If Topuria boxed with Makhachev long enough, I think Topuria would put his lights out. You could tell me I'm a fucking dick rider. I don't care. I think he would. I think I would go for anybody at 55 and down. I think he puts his lights out. Now, the question is, how long is he going to have an opportunity to do that? To me, the issue with Topuria and Islam is going to be how well Topuria can resist the grappling, break contact, fight in a way where he's not defensively, shelling up. Like, remember, I know he was fucked up in it, but like, remember like how Poatan against Ankalaev was like, he was defending the takedown, but like he was defending it with his life, and then there was no offense that came back. It was like, we got to make defense first and nothing else. Like, it ends up muting they put so much emphasis on defense, it ends up muting their offense. And again, I know he was injured and whatnot, but like, if that's the case, or can he down block, circle out, and now he's hunting Makhachev? That's the part to me. Or, to what extent can Makhachev get behind him, locked hands, make him wrestle to his hands, and now he's working that laundry cycle. Can he break contact there? Like, that to me is the only part that is in question. I don't know how, I certainly have some skepticism that, like, can Topuria really do that for 25 minutes if he has to? I don't know. But like, if that's not a problem, I think Topuria wins. Topuria is fucking awesome. He's real good. He's real good. The thing about Charles is, like, beating Charles doesn't go a long way. I mean, I guess if he got out wrestled by Charles would answer that, but like, there's a good chance that like he could either lose or beat Charles, but the wrestling component doesn't tell you much about how it would match up against Islam, right? There's a little bit of that. So that's what I'd be looking for. But Topuria could put anybody at 55's lights out. Anybody. With one shot too. This question doesn't make sense. It's a good question, but it doesn't make sense. How does Topuria's career look if he has the same skill set and attributes minus the knockout power? He would not have the same skill set. He'd have a different one. Also, has there ever been a champion like Volk who had been dropped and nearly submitted so many times in their fights? That's a good question. I'm not sure about that. Does that ability to overcome make them a more incredible fighter, or less so because they were almost able to be defeated? I mean, I wouldn't put Michael Bisping on the same level as Volk in terms of all-time achievement, but Michael Bisping was a guy that had to rally at times, and did often. I don't know if there's been one that's been dropped as many times. That's a good question. Like, I mean, Aldo's been dropped a couple times, more than a couple times. He's been dropped a lot, but he's obviously had a much longer career professionally. That's a good question for like MMA On Point or something, which MMA fighter has been dropped the most? Which UFC champion has been dropped the most? I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. But the whole point is the style that Topuria has and the way which he fights is informed by. Do you hear the frantic Spanish? Jesus. It's been informed by like what results he's been given by his God-given talent, choices he made, power. If he had less power, he would fight differently. He might still fight on the feet, but it would be a different kind of way in which he'd be competing, or maybe he'd abandons it altogether. Part of what, like, how he defined his game came as a result of understanding he had power. You change that, it changes the equation. Oh, dude, this question is long as shit. I cannot get to it. I'm gonna go with one that's got a little, it's a question about Islam, but it's like 1, 2, 4 paragraphs. I don't have time for that. It's a good question. Maybe I'll come back and answer it, but for the members. Here, another one gets this. As skilled as Topuria is, how much do you see size being a limiting factor in his success? That's the most that to me is the only real question. Nothing else to me is like, oh, is his pure wrestling good enough? Yep. Is his jiu-jitsu good enough? Yep. Is his striking good enough? Yep. Does he have too much damage? Nope. Like there's none of, I have no concerns whatsoever. Size is the one that I think is, and I don't know if that will be. I'm saying that's a thing that I'm paying attention to. I don't know if it will be the deciding factor, but it's definitely something on my mind. Okay, let's do maybe 1 or 2 more. All right, let's do this one. Oops. Hang on. Someone who has played / understands a sport at a high level knows to watch for things that more casual fans do not. For example, a serious football / soccer fan knows to watch for off the ball movement, while casual fans typically just follow the ball in their viewing. As someone who has never trained martial arts but is a big fan, any recommendations on how to adjust how I watch a fight to understand more about what is actually happening? Thanks for all your work on your channel, MK. I really appreciate it. Well, partly you can go into what channels like this one, or Jack Slack or Miguel Class, or anybody who makes an effort at breaking down fights. You can learn a lot that way. Let me just say this. You don't have to spend a ton of time or a ton of money doing it. But I would recommend picking out a few tutorials on BJJ Fanatics or Striking Fanatics, even Wrestling Fanatics, and watching the whole way through. So let me give you an example of one. Just Stand Up from Craig Jones. You would be surprised how much you learn about the ground game watching that, and what is defining what guys do, and what dilemmas are there, and what comes next in the progression of that kind of a thing. Like, beyond just watching the sport a lot, you're asking like supplementary things you can do if you're not going to train, and for whatever reason, it's fine. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, like, that's not a thing that's going to happen. So what else can you do to enhance it? Online with what you can see from various channels like this one. But honestly, like, if you guys haven't seen it, go get Just Stand Up. There's a million other tutorials. You don't have to watch that one only. You can pick a different one if you want to. But I really feel like you're going to understand takedowns, takedown defense, ground positions. Oh, no, sorry. There's 2 of them. Balls to the wall is one, and then Just Stand Up is the other. So if you watch those 2 from Craig Jones, Just Stand Up and Balls to the Wall, you will understand why guys go for takedowns, what succeeds, what doesn't, what are the dilemmas, what are we watching for, what are the key positions, why does this position work, why does it not, what are the strategies, what are the core insights defining these, and I know that sounds like a lot. I'm trying to help. That will put you on just those 2 alone would be like revelatory for you. Those 2 alone would like blow your fucking mind. I guarantee it. But you have to find supplemental forms of knowledge is the really only other answer I can give you. Just watching blindly, you will pick up stuff over time, but having someone guide you who does know a lot Craig Jones obviously knows a lot about, the ground game. Having someone like that guide you is going to make that a much quicker process. You might be like, oh, I don't want to watch 2 hours of this. Yeah, but you're going to watch 7 hours of fighting every Saturday for 5 years. What is 2 hours to make the rest of those 7 hours, 5 years, so much more palatable? It's a small short-term investment for a long-term payoff if the goal is understanding the fight game. Yeah. All right. Sorry, I got something in my eye. Jesus. All right. With that in mind, let's go now to the paid portion of this event. Again, if you're a member, you don't have to pay. And if there's any question about getting your stuff seen, you can tag our friend Othello here. He'll hook it up. All right. Jacob says, Luke, you don't have TDS, but you do have BFD syndrome. Baldy for days. What can I say, bro? The Amtrak ladies love me, apparently. March of 34. Okay, that's an interesting name. Anil says, not to rub it in, but apparently when they say 90 minutes is a long time at the Bernabeu, it was meant for Real Madrid, not ours. Okay, we're doing the Champions League bits here. All right. APRTR. Welcome, my friend. Carnage says, bigger waste of money, GFL graphics and animation department or 1FC hydration system? Also, will you have an in-person live chat in Vegas anytime soon? Thanks, King Dog. I don't have any plans to go to Vegas anytime soon. GFL graphics or animation department or hydration system. Because the GFL thing, that was just a bunch of AI prompts. The hydration system, they actually have to go through the process of like that kabuki theater. Like, why the fuck would you want to do that? Oh, Jesus. Luke, I sent an email to you about this earlier. I might have missed it, but I'll ask too here too. My wife and I are going to DC for a vacation this year. Top 5 restaurant recs, man. Okay, so I don't know if these are top 5, but I'll give you 5 that I like right now. Philomena's one. You can go to Georgetown. Some people think it's overrated. It depends what you get, but I'll put it on the list. Unconventional diner. I mean, you just absolutely fucking cannot go wrong. Unconventional diner. For a good cocktail, you can go to El Cielo. I would have said St. Anselm, but I went there recently and they fell off. I was very disappointed in that place. Let me think. Maidan, Maydan is cool. Call Your Mother. You can go to Call Your Mother. Barcelona is good. What else? I'm trying to think. Down by the wharf, you can go get Lucky Buns for if you want like a burger. Duke's Grocery. People will tell you Le Diplomat, don't waste your time. It's on 14th Street. Everybody and their fucking brother will tell you about it. Go to Le Diplomat. No, skip it. It's fine. It's good. It's not that great. Anyway, those recs should get you going. Email me again if you once you get here. Smile says, Luke, still excited for you and Brian to someday record yourselves watching Leonard Hagler. Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. On the same note, who did you have winning Canelo Triple G's first bout? Triple G. Eric, just being a mensch. Thank you, my friend. Rudnam Cheek says, calling it now, Cyril Gane is going to beat both Aspinall and a returning Jon Jones by sitting for a heel hook. Are you with me? I'll bet everything I own that he might try, but fail. Yeah. Please no boss. I did get your notes. How historic was Volk's win against Lopez? Super. And how long does he hold the title? Now, that part I don't know. Holding the title part, I really don't know. I genuinely have no fucking idea. He could lose it in the next fight. It wouldn't surprise me if he did. But what I would say is it's historic, as I mentioned, for 2 reasons. One, he becomes the first fighter 155 and down over the age of 35 on the men's side anyway to win a UFC title, and then he becomes the first guy after 7 tries to win a UFC title after back-to-back defeats, and becomes the only one to do it after back-to-back stoppages. These are they sort of feel like arbitrary markers of success, but they actually kind of signify how he's beating both age and new generations of contenders with the newer games that they bring. So it's not just like the decline of physical performance, but maintaining a skills gap. He's special. He's special. Given recent events, BJ Penn, do you think the UFC will ever address the topic of mental health more openly? Only if they're forced to. Only if they're forced to. What rule changes would you suggest to help prevent similar outcomes for fighters? I don't know. I mean, they kept him around too long. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to BJ Penn's comments, but I don't know if he's being serious or not, or I don't know what to say. But like in it, he is hinting at, like, he doesn't say exactly who, but like hinting at killing. I'm not even making that up. Like he says it openly and a lot actually. I don't know to what extent his issue is also a function of drug abuse and CTE, and but I think that if there is a tragedy, either with BJ Penn or somebody else, God forbid, like nobody wants that. But I think if there is like some kind of terrible event that refocuses attention on the industry and what practices they're taking to assist athletes or to better prevent scenarios like this, yeah, that might change it. But like, unless there's like a real whirlwind of force making them do it, nothing will happen. How do all these go in their primes? BJ versus Islam. We talked about this one before. I mean, I might still favor Islam, but BJ in his prime is tough. BJ versus Volk. BJ. Kane versus Fedor. Probably Kane. Big Donk says TKO boxing is dead on arrival. I don't know about that. Turkey's only strategy is paying exorbitantly and is not sustainable for a league, and UFC strategies only work with a monopoly. Oh, my friend, I think you are going to find that I am not predicting that that's going to be a big bust. I mean, one never knows. It's possible, but I wouldn't bet on it. I would not bet on that even a little bit. Ray says, if Islam vacates the title, that has to be ducking to a large degree, right? Are you fucking high? I think Islam would win versus Topuria, but vacating makes me doubt that. If you vacate a title that you've been holding on to for a while to go up in fucking weight, it's not ducking. Whatever it is, it's not ducking. No. Max says, I want to start a fight promotion. I have no experience, but like the idea of lying and developing a coke. Do I start with money laundering and embezzlement or crypto and MAGA donations? Do I need this coke habit first? You don't need the coke habit first. You can develop it on the job. I would say start with the money laundering and then work your way out from there. That's going to be your best bet. Connor says, if Jones, DJ, GSP, Anderson, Fedor never existed, who's the GOAT? Jesus. Aldo. In the scenario you're positing, it's Aldo. If one puts on great cards, why do they still lose money? What the fuck does putting on quality have to do with making money? I've said this before, like, oh, I don't like the PFL, someone might say. Dude, PFL doesn't put on, like, they have very good fighters on that roster. Like, that roster is quality. No question about it. That roster is good. Poor promotion, UFC dominance over MMA, or both. And how are they still around if they've always operated as a loss? Because who funds them? Venture capital or various funders of, governments or, venture capital firms. They're living off of essentially donations, like large scale ones. But, how are they still around? They're just able to keep convincing people to give them money. There's a lot of rich people that will just give you money if you have the right pitch, the right connections, the right, network, whatever. But you're asking, like, why do they still lose money? Because the business is not sustainable. Like, if you can't make money on pay-per-view, and that's not really an avenue for you, you have to have a very specific kind of operation to make that work as just we're going to make money off linear TV, gate, that kind of stuff. If that's your only mechanism to make money, it has to change your business model. And, you have to be like a regional promotion or something like that. And even then, it doesn't really work that well. It's a tough way to make a business. It's a tough way to make a living. Ronnie says, did you get a chance to look at my email with the PowerPoint presentation on the UFC antitrust law? No. Can you resend it? Can you resend that, please? I don't think I did see that. Who you got on Saturday, Eubank or Conor Benn? I don't think either of them's that great, but I'm going to say Eubank. I don't know. Music recommendation from Colombia, Meridian Brothers. Their psychedelic cumbia, which is kind of like their version of country, sort of. Maybe it's like a folk style kind of music. Maybe too weird for you, but it won't be boring. Desesperanza album. Okay. Meridian Brothers. I'm not a big cumbia guy. There's also Mexican cumbia. I think there's Argentinian cumbia, but like the original cumbia, I am told, comes from Colombia. March 24. Hey, LT, from a fan perspective, why should we care about boxing being ruined by changes to the Ali Act while not caring about why making Jones Francis will hurt the UFC? Wait, let's back up a step here. One more time. Why should we care about boxing being ruined by changes to the Ali Act while also not caring about why making Jones Francis would hurt the UFC? I'm not sure I understand this fucking question. Why should we care about boxing being ruined by changes to the Ali Act while also not caring about why making Jones Francis would hurt the UFC? Is this a poorly worded question or is it me? I'm trying to understand what the through line is here that's being offered. Let me say this. A big question I get a lot about the Ali Act is, what does it mean for me as a consumer? Like, why should I care? It has nothing to do with you, or very little to do with you as a consumer. The Ali Act is not and should not be thought of as some kind of rule that a league has to obey as part of a league rule, where if the NFL makes a series of decisions or institutes rules, they do so for the betterment of the league, potentially the betterment of the sport, although, American football has many dimensions and many levels, and whatever they do in the NFL doesn't necessarily have an impact on like high school sports or whatever, but for their product, for the game as they play it, and what it means for the various stakeholders, the players, the teams, and of course as well a very important, if not maybe the most important constituent, the consumers themselves, right? Where should the kickoff line begin? How do we enforce these penalties? How do we adjust for these changes in the game that we want to make, right? Those are questions where consumer welfare is at the heart of what they're doing. Not the only component, certainly, but a big one. The Ali Act, I'm not suggesting to you it has no component for the consumer. It certainly does, but it's not a primary way in which you need to understand it. It is a law. It is a law as part of the federal government. When laws are introduced to the federal government, they are designed to either prevent or enforce penalties against behavior that harms either targeted groups, the public more generally, or just creates for a general set of harms that need to be accounted for. It's not done as like, okay, let's pass laws that are the most, like, what laws could we pass so that this sport can be enjoyed more directly by the consumer? Yes, again, the concerns are not irrelevant by the consumer, but when you're passing laws as part of the federal government, you're trying to solve for what the government's role can be in these situations, obviously, but you're trying to solve for harm. That's what you're trying to solve for. You're trying to solve and introduce, not in a bullshit kind of way, but like you're trying to make the world fair to a degree and prevent abuses. That's what the law is principally about. You have to ask yourself, does the Ali Act, as flawed as it might be, does it do that? They wouldn't want to change the rules if it didn't. It's people keep saying this like, oh, the belt system in boxing is, it's confusing. And I do grant it creates friction and difficulty for people to get into boxing. I fully acknowledge it. And the sanctioning bodies are fucking crooks. I acknowledge it. But the system of spreading this out, of having a third party control the title, was done not so that they could reward maximally what the consumer might prefer in terms of the simplicity of it, but to prevent abuse. We have to think about this sport as very distinct from other sports. This is not a sport of polite fucking society. It's just not. This is a sport that got federal and state regulation put back into it over 100 fucking years ago. The various state governments, I go back into this many times, they had to make fucking laws in places like New York because there was illegal gambling that was all over it. There was mob ties all over it. Promoters were fucking stealing from people and having, a guy with 100 fights versus a guy with 0. And just, it was completely fucked up. That's what happens to this sport if you leave it to its own devices. This is not the same as a kind of team sport that is much more embedded into polite society and more standard norms. No, this is the fight world. This is the fight world. The fight world attracts sketchballs. It attracts, even under the guise of we're traded on the stock exchange. It attracts people who may or may not act in predatory ways. You introduce laws as a means to reduce, minimize, or otherwise eliminate these harms against people that would otherwise be taken advantage of. And you hope certainly that there is some kind of a way, and often there is, to square that with the consumer interest. But federal laws are not made about boxing so that the consumer can be maximally rewarded. I'm going to say it one more time and I'll move on. Federal laws are introduced because this is a sketchball industry. And if it's not for the government, there will be rank unfairness that takes root. And you already know that to be true. Without even having to look at MMA, you can just look at the history of boxing. You know that to be true. That's what the laws are about. It's about protecting people. It's not about like rewarding, everybody who buys a ticket to a boxing match gets a free hot dog and a soda. That's not what this is. It's not what this is. Question for Luke as a member. Did you see my awesome PFLOL shirts on sale via my Twitter? I did. I've made 180, aka 180 more from from PFL than Don Davis has. All right, that's pretty good, I have to admit. Luke, do you think tonight's draft in Green Bay will draw more viewership than the GFL draft? I mean, they could do nothing and draw more viewership. Also, any idea who you want Washington to pick? I was listening to Sports Talk Radio today. I haven't paid attention at all to like who they can. I mean, what are they picking? The Commanders are picking what, 29th? Last year was big when they got Jaden, obviously, but this year I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck they're going to pick. How did the CNN interview come to be? Can you give some behind the scenes experience? Would you be open to doing something like that again? First of all, I got a question about this. Like, how come you never go on conservative outlets? They don't invite me. I'd go. I mean, I don't know if I'm not going to go on, like, I don't know if Nick Fuentes has a fucking podcast, but short of that, there's a lot of them I would go on. They just don't ask, so if they asked, sure. I mean, I'd be happy to go on Fox News or whatever. Yes, I would do that. I think, people on the left, like deciding, we're just not going to speak to certain people on the right. Like, look where that got them. That didn't do any good. So yeah, I would be happy to do it. But this one came about differently. So Audie Cornish, before the election, I give Audie Cornish a lot of credit. What you're seeing now in the media, it's everywhere. Jacobin Magazine had one piece today, but it's fucking everywhere. In either left-leaning media or audiences that serve left-leaning in either like explicitly left-wing media or media that is not like they don't identify as left wing, but they traditionally serve left wing audiences. What you're seeing is this big post mortem kind of election review, where it's like, wow, look how influential young men were in the election. This was a part of the electorate that was typically like, they're not usually involved as like a deciding factor. They don't go to the polls as often, and here they were to be very, very, influential and important in sending Donald Trump back to the White House. And they're trying to understand like the UFC's rightward turn and all this stuff. But the point is, it all happened post-election. Audie Cornish interviewed Jorge Masvidal at American Top Team, I think in September before the election. She saw it coming ahead of time. She saw it and was like, well, there's something to this. And then she had me on at the same time to get my perspective on it. This was just for her podcast. It was not part of CNN proper. And then her producer hit me up because I don't want. By the way, I don't like. I actually recommend people don't watch cable news. I think cable news is terrible for the country. I really do believe that. But not like every single person in every single piece, but there can be good work that is done. But I think the way in which ratings is used to drive content for news in the way that television networks do it is very, very bad. But the point is, her producers reached out to me. They wanted to do like a post-election, post-mortem. And the fact that I live in DC, I don't live far from the CNN headquarters in DC is right behind Union Station. Like literally, you can walk out the front of it, make a right, and you'll be there in I'm not even exaggerating, 30 seconds. It's like right there. So and I don't live too far from Union Station. So they asked me to come in studio, and I was like, yeah, it was as simple as that. But like, if Laura Ingram's staff reached out to me and they were like, hey, we want you to come on to talk about whatever the fuck Ali Act, I'd do it. They just don't ask. Any plans on bringing back resume review? We talked about it this week. Nothing yet, nothing imminent, but we're working on it. Willie says, what made Madrid your favorite European city? Because it's fucking magical. For me, you can't beat Paris. Paris is much more expensive. It's bigger. And the Parisians, so the people that think the French are rude, that's not true. The French are actually quite nice. It's the Parisians that are kind of shitty. The food can be good if you know where you're going, but it's bigger. It's, it's expensive as shit. Madrid is also big, but I think it's very easy. Paris is easy to get around too, but Madrid, very easy to get around. Dude, you can just walk blindly into a store somewhere and, eat food, and it's like, holy shit, good. And I don't know, there was something more interesting about their history to me than French. I mean, your mileage may vary. I'm not making a broad declaration that Spanish history is more interesting, but it was more interesting to me. But the fact that it was cheaper and the fact that I did not find the people, it's not like the Spanish are like super welcoming, but I don't know. Their culture seemed richer to me. That's going to piss the French off, but that's just how it was for me. How closely are you paying attention to Eubank Ben this weekend? Not very. A little bit. The undercard is actually pretty stacked with multiple former world champions. It was quite lively at the press conference. It's a huge deal in the UK. They're going to be in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I think they're going to have like 70,000 people there. It's a big one. Favorite Colombian dish? Nothing beats ajiaco for me. Ajiaco is a kind of Colombian stew that they eat in the mountains. It has like this rice kind of almost creamy base to it. They put like corn in there. They put aguacate, avocado. They put a bunch of shit in there. Cazuela. The cazuela, the seafood cazuela that I ate in Cartagena is the most amazing fucking dish I've ever had in that country by a million miles. It's like this shrimp cheese gratin kind of stew. Holy fuck. The cazuela. Tom says, how can Jones be considered the GOAT when he has failed multiple PEDs? Don't care. Refused to fight Ngannou. That's not quite true. DC at heavyweight. It's true. He didn't fight him at heavyweight. I don't know what that was supposed to mean. Tom currently. Now that would be bad. Chael short notice. But then he did fight Chael and he smoked him, The failing of the PEDs thing. First of all, the arbitration process, I know this is hard for people to hear. But if you actually read what the arbitrators wrote, they all basically exonerate him. Now, they do say he was negligent in certain cases, but they offer scientific explanations for why he got there as not merely plausible, but potentially even likely. Like, if people, please don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't fucking do it. Read it. Read what the arbitration settlements essentially say. They don't paint him as some kind of drug cheat. I'm sorry to tell you that. Like, you can think, I mean, I'm not telling you you're wrong for thinking that. I'm just telling you, like, what is the actual anti-doping record in terms of what was shown about him when he sought the process through? Widespread condemnation is not it. I know it's hard to hear. People don't believe me when I tell them that, but I'm telling you, that's what they say. That's clearly what they say. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. Also, you know, now, during USADA, before it, so many of your favorite fighters are drug cheats. I mean, you know, you might want to argue, oh, Jon got caught more than other ones, or, you know, he got caught more because he used more. To me, it's kind of all lost in the wash a little bit. I think trying to parse out, like, who was using how much it affects their legacy, what can we say about it? To me, I think it's an exercise in trying to see how many angels can fit in the head of a pin. And it doesn't change really the core discovery of what we have. Start, bench, cut, Pride Edition. Shogun, Vanderlei, and Krokop. Pride Edition. Well, damn, you got 3 Pride legends. Jesus. Start, Shogun. I mean, in that order. Dude, yeah. Shogun, Vanderlei, Krokop, in that order. Start, bench, cut. I mean, you can't really cut any of them or bench any of them, but, you know. Are you going to race Turki believing in? What the fuck does that mean? J. Ray. Just backed up 1 mile of shoulder to get around 1.5 hours of traffic. Have any good highway traffic stories? The only one was I was leaving a training environment one time. I was crossing the bridge from Virginia or Maryland into Virginia, actually right where I was yesterday by Oxon Hill. And it was after practice. And so I was like fucking tired, and the bridge was coming up so a boat could go underneath, you know? And so I just kind of laid back. It was like summer, but it was like early summer. So like when at night it was cool, or like it was a breeze. So I rolled my windows down, kind of laid there. Next thing I know, I wake up and there's honking all around me. And in front of me, there's nobody. You can't even see a car, except the cars are whizzing by on the 2 other lanes. I was in the middle lane, and I had fallen fucking asleep, and it was causing a traffic jam. And I was like, oh, well, I'm the asshole here. So other than that, traffic just makes me so insane that I take public transportation as often as I possibly can. Mordetsky, how big is your phoner for Hall versus Pudzianowski? Hell yeah. Hell yeah, it is. KSW knows what the fuck is up. They know what's up. 2 former strongmen. Pudzianowski was a better strongman than Hall, or a more successful one anyway. But, I mean, that one just has dynamite written all over it. Can't wait. Larry made easy. Luke, I can't get past your bias on Jon ducking Tom. Jon said he'd fight Tom for the right price. Dana keeps saying Jones will fight. How are you arguing for fighters getting paid? I'm not arguing for Jon ducking. If he doesn't do this, it's obviously ducking, right? On some level. But I'm just sort of pointing out, like, I don't know. The longer I've been thinking about it, like, no, you're right. I mean, it's ducking, like, you know, to hold on to the title this whole time, right? To leave us in limbo, to make it act like, to the point that someone had raised previously, that, you know, the longest reign at heavyweight, even though he's only had 2 fights. You know, all of this would be an incredible duck, an incredible letdown. At the same time, it's like, I'm already let down. I'm trying to remain optimistic that the fight happens, but, like, to me, it's like he's just trying to game the last bit of his athletic life. And I don't know, in a way that is like so nakedly obvious to me, that, like, I'm already kind of disappointed where we are. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm not trying to absolve the way in which you're asking the question. It's quite right, but Oh, God. It's Chael Sonnen. It's Chael Sonnen. What does Chael want? Oh, for fuck's sake. Jesus. Oh, Lord have mercy. It's not. Chael's great. No, but Chael wants me to do. Oh, Jesus. All right. I can't right now. Will BJ Penn be our Benoit? Now, I have been talking about Chris Benoit. That is a very, very dangerous thing to bring up, and I'm a little bit hesitant to even like breathe life into the idea because of how like scary it all is. I'll level with you all. I am extremely worried. I'm extremely worried. I'm not making a comparison to the Chris Benoit story, but these things don't resolve on their own in terms of just getting better. When you're at the stage he's at, there is typically three things that happen. Some terrible incident happens and the person goes to jail. Some terrible incident happens and worse than that, people, not just their own, but others' lives can be lost. Or some kind of help can happen and progress can be uneven, but that medical and then psychological intervention that happens can help. But like, if you don't do the last of those, then the other two are a virtual guarantee. And it's hard to say exactly on what terms and when. That part is very difficult. My understanding is that like people in his family are aware that other people are very concerned about him. My understanding is that people are trying to do things to get him help. I don't know exactly what the family is doing specifically. It does not appear at the current stage to be enough, but I'm not trying to besmirch their efforts if they're actually trying, because it can be difficult. But if something isn't done, like these things just don't go away on their own. They resolve in a very different kind of way, and we don't want to find out what that is. Did you see B. Campbell? Was it Brian? Did you see Tuivasa is 308 pounds? Yeah, he's been eating. He's been lost 4 or 5 in a row. I mean, Liam says, in Paddy's post-fight interview, I expected him to say, fuck Trump. He is very vocal in the UK against the Tories, which are your Republicans. If he had, how detrimental would that have been to his UFC career? Could have made him a big villain, actually. Could have made him a big villain, which is very profitable. But I guess he's trying to win people over a little bit, Max says, Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludovic Klein. How do you feel about the matchup? It's actually pretty interesting. I mean, you would have thought Gamrot would have got something better, but it's a nice. Klein is 7 in a row since moving to the weight class. Seems crazy Klein not being ranked getting this opportunity. Yeah, but he looks like he might be the goods, or at least he could be. How do you see the Klein? How do you think Klein can get the win? Same way you can beat Gamrot in any other case, you have to stop the takedown. Got to stop the takedown. After that, he's actually quite hittable. Afifi says, I have nothing better to ask. So on a scale from Michael Chandler to current Daniel Cormier, how fit were you at your peak? How fat at the lowest? I don't know. At my peak, 2 different kinds of peaks. I had a good cardiovascular peak coming out of boot camp, but I had a strength peak much later, closer to like 24 or so, where I just spent all that time lifting weights, but I had a first class PFT at the end. So, yeah. Luke saw Pete the Booty Judge on with, Pete Buttigieg, yes, with Andrew Schultz this weekend. He's such a strong communicator. Do you think he's a good 28 candidate? I'll say this. I did see that. I think Andrew Schultz saying shit like, the Republicans let you say what you want. No, they let you say slurs. They do not let you say whatever you want. They are literally criminalizing dissent by taking people that they admit in their own documentation have broken no laws, but they're going to lock them up and try to deport them anyway. Right? It's just literal criminalizing of dissent. We're going to take over universities because they broke the fucking Civil Rights Act. Get the fuck out of here with that bad faith bullshit. They just want to They want to control the terms of academia because short of the government forcing it on them, it never would happen on its own, right? Because their ideas are not winning ideas. It can only be legislated into them. But to answer the question, it's good that he went on the program. It's good that they invited him on the program. It's good that it all worked out. I think it's good for this kind of communication to happen. You know, I don't know if I love Buttigieg as somebody. I don't know if I could vote for him or not. I was less than thrilled with his initial presidential run. He eventually did okay as a transportation secretary, though he started quite rocky. So I don't know how I feel about that. But I would say in general, you know, there's been this big push on the left to be like, oh, we're going to ostracize everyone on the right who we don't agree with. And I think that was a tragic mistake. And so somebody like him who gets out there and can articulate a vision, you may like it, you might hate it, but can at least sit down for a few hours and argue on behalf of a worldview that they believe in, I think is good. Is Diego Lopez the modern Roger Huerta? No, he's better than that. Much better. Roger Huerta was an interesting fighter, but he was never a great one. Diego Lopez, he's limited too, but he's better. He fought for a fucking title. You know what I mean? MK all day. Thank you, Saul. Albert says, Luke, what is your opinion of Helwani? What kind of question is that? I have issues with his style of reporting. He consistently mocks and antagonizes fighters for ratings and purses, propaganda rather than journalism. Guys, I don't really understand this argument that, oh, this guy is mean to fighters. It's like, first of all, the majority of the time that I've seen people accused of that, it's not even true. Second of all, I'm not even sure that that's a problem. There are plenty of media personalities whose entire worldview is based on antagonizing and fucking with fighters, and they seem to be doing just fine. So this idea that like, oh, when one person does it, we hate it, but when another person does it, we love it. To me, I'm not exactly saying that's what you're saying, asking this question, but it's like, and let me just say this too. You know, I have made a lot of efforts over the years at being as nice as I possibly could to many, many fighters. Some I didn't, some I did not, but many I did. And it didn't get like, of course, you're not nice to them to get anything out of it. I want to be clear about that, but it didn't get me shit. It didn't get me shit. More often than not, when I'm actually antagonistic to them is when something actually arises. I don't know why the world is this way. I don't know why they are this way. But like, I'm not even sure that the charge is true, but even if it were true, it's not clear to me that's a problem. It's not clear to me. It does not appear to me, what is the evidence that there is an industry push from within the industry to these actors who are mean to fighters to eliminate them by the fighters themselves? It doesn't even... like the notion that like what happens is if you're really nice to, if you're nice to them and you're professional to them, that is the right way to do it. I certainly agree that being professional to them is, especially if you have direct contact with them all the time, is really, really important. But like, this doesn't, nice guys finish last, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like this whole notion that'll be like, this is also like a thing that's like levied at media for even shielding them from fair criticism. Like any version of criticism sometimes will be like, oh, that guy's just fucking hating, or so-and-so just doesn't like them, or, it just gets minimized anyway. And honestly, even if you lean into it, sometimes it seems to reward people on the back end even more. So like, I find this whole idea that like, oh, so-and-so is mean to the fighters. My response is so fucking what? Many of them don't give a shit if you're professional to them. Many of them don't give a shit if you're nice to them. Again, if you want to be nice to them and you want to be professional to them because that's the standard that you believe in for your work, I commend it. There's nothing wrong with it. But if somebody doesn't give a shit about that and they're just looking at the lay of the land and they're like, well, nice guys finish last and dickheads don't, what I don't make the rules. I'm only observing them. So to me, like, I find this whole charge, well, the media was, they were really mean to the fighters. Please miss me with this bullshit. Half of them seem to love it. They, oh, if I'm nice to the fighters, they will be nice to me in the long run. Try that shit. Try that shit. You'll get stepped on and left behind quickly. Make a little noise, rattle their cage. All of a sudden, sometimes, they'll come back and be like, well, hey, now let's talk. Trust me, I have, even if you want to say I didn't do it, I have seen the media folks who behind the scenes bend over backwards to be friendly. It doesn't get them any favors long term. So if you're going to do it because you believe that that's the right thing to do, then do it, and I support it. But if you're trying to make just a calculated decision about like what kind of response you're going to get, we are long past the point of complaining about media being mean to fighters, because being nice to them did fuck all. And honestly, there appears to be some evidence that they almost, many, or at least not many, some even prefer the opposite. Absolutely. And again, it's just another way to shield them from criticism that they might otherwise deserve. I think it's important to be nice to everybody, including the fighters. I think it's important to be, I personally think it's important to the, I've got some fractured relationships in the industry with a few different people, and I don't, whatever, that's different. But like in general, it's important to do your best to like treat people like humans anyway. But if people want to be mean, whatever that's supposed to mean, whatever that even means, I let them deal with the consequences. And honestly, the consequences in certain cases appear to be, the fighters love it. So I don't even know how to even like possibly care about this, Thane says, do you have any suggestions on running shoes? I'm not the guy for this. I have a 0 arch to my feet and stopped wearing shoes for style at 27. I use, to the extent I have one good pair of running shoes, Ultra, ALTRA. It's got a wide toe box and 0 drop. So I recommend that, but I'm not a running shoe guy, Thoughts on Shannon Sharpe stepping aside from ESPN? Did he step aside? Is that real? Oh, it is. Shannon Sharpe stepping aside from ESPN in wake of sexual assault lawsuit. Wow. It won't be permanent, I suspect. I mean, he's not facing criminal charges, so I don't really know. I'll just say this, like, if you're 19 as a guy and you hear, oh, this 56-year-old guy is banging some 19 or 20-year-old, you're thinking, man, he's really living it. To me, I'm not going to sit here and say that, late life sexual exploits are something to be scoffed at. That's not my point, but I'd love to have Shannon Sharpe's money. Okay. I mean that. I would love to have his money. I'm sure that part is fucking sick. I don't want his romantic life. I would never want that. Like I would never, ever. If you're 56, it's like, I don't even know how you can, like, your life is so distinct from a 19-year-old's. Your journey to that point is so distinct. And again, I get it. It's just some kind of like, sexual fucking escapade, but nevertheless, you're supposed to wind down as your life gets older. Yes, you can still keep it fresh and you can keep it interesting, and the maintaining youth and the trimmings of it and the parts of your life that keep you young, or all that's important. But like, having any kind of romantic, I see these guys like, oh, so and so was like 49 and he's dating somebody who's 21, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck do y'all even talk about? It seems like so absurd that your lives are absolutely different. You're in absolutely different places. So I don't know what he did or did not do. I've heard some of the tapes. They all sound pretty bad, but I don't know what kind of evidence that constitutes. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. But the part where you're 56 and you're still hanging around like literal teenagers, you can't accept You know, they're like, dude, like men have a problem. You know, it's why you always see like men trying to like date younger, like, and they're which by itself is not necessarily sinister, but you know, the larger and larger gaps. Whereas women as they age don't necessarily want like a 21-year-old guy. To me, it's a mentality that men have about like the only kind of acceptable partner, romantic or sexual, is, you know, you need to put a premium on their youth. And to me, that just absolutely stunts your maturation as a person. It completely separates you from where you actually are in your life. It doesn't give you the rewarding growth that you need. It doesn't enhance your as it's supposed to over time, your judgment or wisdom or your own sense of satisfaction about like what is actually nurturing to you in that stage of your life. You know, the things that nurture you at 21 are not the same things that nurture you at 31 or 41 or now 50 fucking one. They're very different things that you need for a happy life. Guys, I'm trying to level with you. I don't have life figured out, far from it. But I'm trying to say this is one thing that I keep coming back to every year. It becomes more and more true. Everybody's chasing these like peak experiences and like these big events, and those are cool, especially in my 20s and like parts of my 30s. It was real cool to like be a part of the biggest thing and the coolest thing and the most viral thing, and we're here trying the most viral fucking burger, and we're gonna go try the most viral experience. These things of grand scale. And I'm telling you, as you get older, something happens to you where what you really want, what really ends up mattering, what ends up nurturing you is the simple things, is the simple pleasures of life: family, children, a good book. It sounds so fucking lame if you're 21. I understand that. Live your life at 21 on the crazy ass terms you want to. Lord knows I did. But just understand something, that like you're supposed to age and enjoy things differently as you get older. And if you fuck up that process, it's how you end up being bordering on 60, and you're now having romantic partners who are fucking teenagers, like, independent of whatever happened to them legally or otherwise. This is the result of someone who has absolutely not understood where he is in life and what he actually needs. And I'm not saying he has to have someone else who's also 56. They could be in their 30s, but like a woman who is a little bit more mature, who, you know, maybe does have a couple more wrinkles, you know, maybe does have a little bit of gray hair, maybe, I don't know, but has the kind of ability to give back to you what you really actually need. That's what you're looking for, fellas. I couldn't be more certain of it if I tried. Henry, just to add to the three main UFC fights that fans want, I also have a feeling boxing will have kind of a dull rest of the year. Might be heating up a little bit. I mean, you're going to get the Cinco de Mayo card with, you're going to get the May 2nd card in Times Square, Canelo, and then Inoue, all back to back in a weekend. You got the one coming up with Eubank, and we're probably going to get Tyson Fury back this year. You're going to get AJ back this year. It won't be like the barn burner. You're going to get Bud and Canelo later this year. That's a little premature. Let's see. Sean Brady, the best welterweight with the first two names. Yes. Luke, is the U.S. in a constitutional crisis? Yes. Or approaching it? Already here. Seems like the executive branch has no regard for the decisions of their judicial branch, flat out ignoring checks and balances. I love this argument from people. This one's my favorite. It's like, oh, well, these judges are just going to decide what the president can do. Yeah. So here's how it works. Here's how laws work. You're allowed to pass laws that cohere with the guidelines and protections and rules established in constitutional order. And if you don't, the judiciary branch's not sole but clear purpose is to provide a check on that. So these guys just fucking writing executive orders being like, oh, we're just going to do this. And people are like, oh, he's a president, he can do whatever he wants. No. They have to be legal by themselves, and they have to match the constitutionality of what we already understand related to these various laws that they're attempting to establish or alter. And if not, then they're going to get overturned. It's very, very simple. Like, pass the laws that you want within the constitutional framework, or if you really have enough support, you can actually change the Constitution. But that's This is a very simple concept to understand. Is covering UFC less fun now? It is at this present moment, but it goes in waves. UFC only reports its own news and fights. Felt more exciting when journalists reported leaked news. UFC is suppressing the sport's vibrance to maintain total control. I mean, there's just simply no denying that is true. But I don't know what to say about that. I can't fight that. That battle has been lost already. Kobe says, when talking about fighter pay, the UFC gets compared to boxing, but are our boxers in some cases overpaid? In some cases, sure. How many of these boxing events are profitable? Well, you mean like the ones in Saudi? Very few. But, they're not designed to be, at least not right now. Yeah, some of them are overpaid. But, they're also the ones getting brain damage. They're also the ones that power the entire sport. Henry says, hopefully it will never happen, but would you be really surprised if Mayweather, McGregor, or even Pacquiao blow all their millions someday? No. Would not be surprised at all. Sean says, do you think Dana has seen BJ's Instagram? I have to imagine he's aware of it. I know the UFC legally isn't responsible, but do you think on a personal level Dana feels bad for letting BJ have so many additional unnecessary fights? I doubt it. I'm not sure what he feels bad about. Albart says, grapplers like Musumeci and Nicky Rod claiming to be natural. Isn't that unsupported since steroid testing in BJJ is rare? If they want change, shouldn't they prove they're drug-free? There's no such way to prove you're drug-free. I mean, even if you took tests, that doesn't necessarily prove you're drug-free. That's that notion, like, oh, I can prove I'm drug-free. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can prove certain kinds of drug-freeness. You can't prove being drug-free. Luke, who on the UFC roster do you think cuts the NAS? Okay, what are we doing? Is it Derek Lewis? Yes. Aqua says, would you rather have the legacy of Khabib, undefeated, basically untouched, but retire too early, or GSP, 2 titles, long reign, beat everyone? I would have Khabib. As less damage as possible. Dave says, Frankie Edgar may have been dropped by Gray Maynard more than Volk in his career. Ooh, that's a good one. He might have. He might have. I would love to see this one measured. I don't know what the answer to it is. It's a great comparison. Lord of the Pies. Who would you rather do cocaine with, Jon Jones or Connor? Oof, Jesus. I'd rather just OD solo. AZ says, you watching Pujanowski versus Hall? Does a bear shit in the woods? What are your predictions? Pujanowski is older, but he was a much better strongman and is a much better fighter. But he's older, so I don't really know. Will you be entertained? It depends. It depends. Hexeth is the goat dog. He just reminds me of every fucking officer I ever had to deal with in the Marine Corps, because he was only I think he only got promoted to major, so like he was a company grade, then low field grade officer. And these guys, like, they're not like stupid, they're not, but they're highly partisan. They do have core competencies around like the very low level kind of officer work that they do and command posts that they have. But like the fucking Department of Defense is a very different level for which he's clearly not prepared. The one thing I will say is, he is against striking Iran. And it looks to me like there are forces both within the Pentagon and outside of it that want Hexeth out so that they can install, basically new neocons to saber rattle. And so I'm not saying I hope like Hexeth stays around for that, but I am concerned what would happen if he gets replaced and then those insane motherfuckers take over the various positions. Tori says, thanks for the old rant on old guys not fucking themselves up starting hardcore BJJ training at 40. Saved my friend, hopefully regurgitating you. Some people just don't understand. I mean, you can train depending. I mean, everyone's a little different. I got a buddy who's 41 or 42 who still trains a lot, but he's like an Iron Man. Like, he's very different. But like, there's a lot of donks who are going to get fucked up doing that. Jose says, top 5 newer heavy bands that you've been listening to this year? None. It doesn't have to be from this year, but your jams this year? None. Harm's Way a little bit. That's really about it. I haven't listened to hardly anything new this year. 915 says, With so many of the same questions and points being repeated every stream, are there points you're tired of having to make that you see falling on deaf ears? No, I'm happy to make the arguments that need to be made. Willie says, any tips for language learning? I wish I knew. I'm currently intermediate level French and have 90 minutes per day to study. That's pretty good. I'm already speaking with natives for 2 hours a week. Speaking with the natives is really the issue. That's the issue. That's the one you got to do. Everything else is good. That's great. Diet Picasso. Why does it feel like Islam is being treated like the champ with 1 defense and Ilia is being treated like the champ with 4 title defenses by fans? Because they've never really liked Islam all that much. They've been, like begrudgingly told to accept how good he is. Jeff says, I already watched the pay-per-views on Fight Pass in Canada, and I've never experienced any of the ESPN problems. Also, I watch fight nights there because I don't watch them live. I agree with you, Luke. Yeah, I'd be happy. If they told us, we're going to go to Fight Pass, I'd be like, sweet, perfect, love it. Why wouldn't you go on Nick Fuentes' podcast? Are your arguments no good? I would say that he is insanely fucking racist. That's a problem for me. Darcy says, lest we forget for any Anzacs in the chat. Oh, you mean like the Oceanic Donks? Mint says, what about Anthony Cumia's show? I don't know anything about Anthony Cumia's show. Isn't he fucking wildly racist too? I don't know. I mean, but something not. I mean, you guys were like, well, okay. What about this guy who also says insanely racist shit? I was thinking more like something along the lines of, I don't know, anywhere from something on Fox News to, Patrick Bet-David. I'm not big enough and famous enough for that, but, something along those lines, or even Tim Pool, or again, not that I'm presuming that I'm a good candidate for those shows, but like within the ideological spectrum where I think you can reach people who need to be reached, who might disagree with you, but you're not just, what I'm going to do, have a shouting match with fucking Anthony Cumia or something. I don't know what that purpose that would serve. Christian says, hey, Luke, I do not keep up with politics at all for my happiness. Does this make me selfish? No. I am much happier living in my own little bubble. No. I think you got to do what you got to do to be happy. No, I think it's okay. Signature Sounds. Luke, in your tenure with the PBC, did you ever meet the mythical figure? Never even saw him. Not only did I not meet Al Heyman, I don't know if he was, I never even laid eyeballs on him. BC has only laid eyeballs on him like a couple of times, BMAC. Max and Volk both had success against Ilia with the jab and low kick. A little bit, not a ton. Is this something that can be exploited further at 55? Yes. But this like this, it's a major weakness. Nah. That's not quite true. Do you see Turki still working with the UFC, boxing, or even the WWE in 10 years? It really will depend on what TKO boxing does. What if something happens to the Saudi economy? That could also be a factor as well. But the big one is what if TKO? But listen, TKO boxing could fizzle. If it does, then I suspect that will be the issue. But if it succeeds, then there you go. I think modern fight fans understand belts and how they work. I'm confused how the Ali Act truly changes anything. UFC just wants a belt. Why would they want to change it if it doesn't change anything? Why would they want to change it? What difference would it make? Right? They're trying to change federal law. Why would they want to do that? Because it does nothing. I mean, the entire premise of the question is sort of silly. Guys, if I'm the WBC heavyweight champion and my time with Eddie Hearn has come and gone, and now I'm a free agent, and now Matchroom wants my services, because by the way, the next fight that I have set up is a huge money fight with Tyson Fury, or potentially could be a Tyson Fury fight or AJ fight. I'm at a point where the next few fights are going to be big. I can take that WBC title with me. And by the way, they can't hold me at Top Rank, they can't hold me at Matchroom, because if I'm a champion, they can't add on lengths to my contract as a consequence of it, which they can if you control the title, and also who even gets the title and how your rankings even work. I have value independent of the promoter through the title if the title is separate from the promoter, and that the world that confers is so much better, to say nothing of what, again, as I just mentioned, how the title, if the promoter owns it, can be used to also affect contract length and other terms. So, we're just used to it in MMA because people don't care a lot that the fighters are exploited, including but not limited to the fighters themselves. They just don't give a shit. They're just like, yeah, we're happy to live this way. All right, well, live that way then, I guess. But if we have a world where these protections have been put in place, it's a bad idea to remove them if what you care about is actually protecting the people who are sacrificing the most. The Hive, welcome, my friend. You'd rather see Islam at welterweight or Ilia versus Islam? Ilia versus Islam is a bigger fight. It's a bigger fight. But I don't know, yeah, for that reason, I would rather see it. But I don't know. I would love to see Islam at 70. I'll just put it that way too. Rafi says, hope you know how many Muslims love you. God bless. Well, God bless you guys as well. Thank you. Computer Guy Dre, is Kevin Lee still a future world champ? No, not all the predictions turn out all that great. This donk says, just curious, did you see Ilia on Patrick Bet-David's pod? I saw clips. PBD ignorantly tried to humanize Putin's presence in Georgia. Oh, and I guess he didn't take that too kindly. That's interesting. Dave says, second message can ignore. Any thoughts on the Douglas Murray, Joe Rogan, Dave Smith, Israel Gaza debate? Yeah, Douglas Murray is a fucking idiot. First of all, I've been to Gaza. I mean, long before it, was turned into this. I've been to Israel. I've been to these places. So, can I speak on that? It's just the silliest fucking argument imaginable. The guy is a tool of propaganda for the Israeli government. Douglas Murray is. I don't even, what are we even debating anymore? This is not that, if there is a debate about what to do to solve the problem, okay, we recognize what the problems are. How do we solve this? Right? Do we do a two-state solution? Do we do a one-state solution? If we do a one-state solution, does it cease to become an explicitly Jewish state? How do we solve this problem? Those, I think, are areas where there really is interesting terms of debate to be had. But if we're talking about the conduct of the Israeli military and what we've done to the Palestinian people, there is no fucking debate. What the fuck are we talking about? What are we talking about? One group is oppressed by the other. One of these groups is represented by a nation that has the support of the most powerful military on earth. One has none of those things. One has vast resources because of this relationship to exert their influence culturally, legally, militarily, and one is at the mercy of them. One has their economy destroyed, even the West Bank, which is not even under, it's under military occupation, but it's not being bombed. And one is doing the embargoing. One controls the borders of the other one. One is up here and one is down there. B'Tselem, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. B'Tselem is Israeli. They all talk that they all explicitly state it's an apartheid state. What is the fucking debate? What is the fucking debate? One group militarily occupies another. There is no debate. Have I not seen children shredded on my phone for 18 months? Have I not seen? Did you guys see the ambulance, the medics that were gunned down at point blank range for 3 fucking minutes, buried in a mass grave? They caught the government lying about it. Do you remember at the beginning of this conflict that, oh my God, how could we even suggest that the Israeli army would strike the Al-Shifa hospital? And then they just destroyed all the water supplies. They destroyed schools. They destroyed universities. They destroyed virtually all the hospitals. They've destroyed markets. They've destroyed homes. They've destroyed infrastructure. They destroyed everything. What are we talking about? This is not a complex debate about who is doing what to who. It's not to say that the other side has not committed their own series of grave sins and terrorism. Yes, they have. Of course they have. Of course they fucking have. And by the way, there's now a movement sort of slowly bubbling up from the surface within Palestinian society against Hamas, which fine, I'm okay with. I don't have any love for them. But this is this silliness. We're going to just debate the terms of this. This is a co-equal, conflict. It's just fucking baffling. Like, how are we still here? This is not, in terms of who is doing what to who, this is not difficult to understand. How we solve it, very difficult. Very difficult. But like, we're at the stage where the president of the United States is talking about ethnically cleansing the fucking Gazans. Like, what debate? What debate? This is very simple. It's just that there are people that don't want to accept this. I can understand that, but like, how do we morally debate this? Very simply. It's not hard. You have to go. Well, it's like, okay, well, I've been there. So now what do you have to say? Two Chanks. Quick thoughts on JFK assassination. Don't have any moon landing. It worked. And the OJ murder trial. Surprising in real time, and after the fact, not so much. Daniel says, hey, Luke, been going through multiple life stressors simultaneously. Breakup, parent being sick. Do you have any advice from personal experience beyond what ChatGPT would tell me? I get asked this question all the time on this chat. It's the same thing I'm going to say to everybody, which is, sorry that's happening to you, but you have to provide structure in your life. Healthy structure, going to bed on time, getting up on time, having a routine, drinking water, exercising, having a community. Like, all those are important. That's step one, or at least part of the process. And the other part of it is you have to talk to a specialist. You can't just talk to ChatGPT. You got to talk to like a real person. Mr. Rat says, on MK this week, you mentioned you bought a pair of sleep pods. Can you share which brand model you purchased? Sleep pods? Like a thing you sleep in? I don't know what that is. I didn't buy that. Sydney says, not a question, but how fascinating to have gone from a time where Covington built a villain persona by being a MAGA person to how things are now. Yeah, they've completely transformed the fan base. Johnson says, I would just like to apologize anthropologically and epistemologically for last week's remarks regarding Ant's mental. He has very big brain. Okay. I like how Joe Rogan gets rewarded little gifts, rewards from fighters after in-ring interviews. White bear hats, monkey hats, blunts, nerd glasses, lap dances. That must be fun. Johnson says, is there a contest between Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Kristi Noem to become the best Disney princess villain in DC or something? She apparently got her shit stolen, Kristi Noem, but they didn't say where. Yeti says, Vinny Paz album drops at midnight. You hyped? Of course. What is it? God Sent Vengeance is the new one. I'm buying the signed vinyl. Sick. Terrence says, will AOC become president? She's going to run. Whether she wins, I don't know. This would be great for the Latin community, people of color, and women. And what chances does she have? Well, it depends. Are we going to have free and fair elections in 2028? That remains to be seen. If we do, her chances are good, especially if, again, one more time, Trump is only net positive on the border. He is now net negative on everything else. And with no end of the tariff problems are far from over. So, I don't think that there is strong evidence in the career of Donald Trump to say that he is a capable executor of complex policy and or an executor of important. That's not quite right, because he did do Operation Warp Speed, but I wouldn't vote for that motherfucker for dog catcher. That's how incompetent I think he is. And I think that in the first administration, we were largely shielded from those effects by other folks in his own office and all the way down to the bureaucracy who prevented the worst of the things he was attempting. You're not going to get that this time. So, yeah, enjoy. Can you confirm everyone's suspicion that BC has his hands down his pants when he does the long, creepy, oh yeah, in every MK opening? He does not. What do you think about the new Predator trailer? So there's two of them. There's Badlands, and then there's the one that's the cartoon. I'm cautiously optimistic about both. Afghan says, gonna see Messi play today, the GOAT. Ooh, enjoy that. That's gonna be fun. And then this donk says, hello, Lukito. Just got tickets for PFL's semis in Wichita. Any tips or advice for maximum enjoyment? Go to as much as you possibly can during fight week. Keep up the great work. Papa BBLs for life. Yes, indeed, my friend. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. One more time if you want. This right here. This is for my Substack where we do all kinds of stuff I cannot do here and then more. So if you'd be so kind, you can check that out. Thanks to everyone who donated. Thanks to everyone who watched. We're out of here for today. I won't be watching the fights live this weekend. I would do it live. I'm actually going to be hanging out with some friends for once. I decided to make some time with friends. So, but I'll have something for you early Sunday morning. And that's it. All right. I love you guys. We're out of here. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, stay frosty, bitches. Bye.